Welcome to the Workforce Situation Room, where we spotlight some of the promising and innovative solutions that address some of our most pressing workforce and economic challenges. Our mission at Workforce Solutions Borderplex is to power businesses to prosperity by empowering people with tools and opportunities to reach their potential in the workforce. I'm Bianca, your host, and I stand alongside our ladies of leadership at Workforce Solutions Borderplex with Leila Melendez, our CEO, Alma Aranda, Workforce Development Director, and Karina Castillo, our Senior Research Analyst. In this room, we all believe every situation has a solution. For today's episode, here's the situation. All right, so it's just going to be Leila and I today, and we wanted to kick off our first podcast of the year with kind of a review as to what's been going on in 2022. And it blows my mind. It really does feel like just last year, just a few days that we talked about the crystal ball with the crystal ball episode and predicting what was going to happen and what we were planning to do. So what we've done in the past year, though, is I'm going to use Leila's quote, and it's something that I think is the best way to go into what it is that we do with workforce development, economic development. And it's like, it's Leila's quote is disrupt or be disrupted. And I feel like this year we really did a lot of disrupting when it came to innovation and the implementation of the programming that we have. We tackle the problems head on before they snowball. And if they've come to the point of snowball, then we know exactly where to hit. Leila, did you ever watch that movie, Don't Look Up? With Leonardo DiCaprio and about the meteor that was coming in. So I had a like metaphoric way of looking at that when I was actually watching the movie. Is there's this giant meteor coming, or this giant problem at workforce, and there's a way to kill this meteor, and it's by like putting a bunch of little rockets on it and exploding that thing. Even though they were not successful, we do that. I feel like we do the same thing with some of the issues that we deal with, where we put a bunch of our staff and we take this approach of targeting every area that we can to implode the issue that we're dealing with. And one of the biggest issues here is access, and that hits a lot on equity. Now, I'm gonna be really honest when I say that 5 years ago, before I had Ava, childcare was not even a thing. I had people in my work office that had kids. And for me, it was sometimes admittedly an eye roll of like hearing the excuses, or not excuses, but reasons that certain things couldn't happen, or doctor's appointments. And it was always just this like, yeah, okay. I didn't have the sensitivity back then, but talk about growing and lessons and what having a kid will do for you, right? So now I believe that childcare is front and center. It's the first thing that we need to focus on when it comes to workforce and economic development and just building that foundation. So looking directly at this report, Leila, that Karina's put together for us, access to affordable childcare and even technology advancement in the centers that we're providing. Tell me a little bit about what WSB has done, or tell our listeners what WSB has done in the area of childcare and how we're treating this realm differently than we used to before.
Yeah, so it's really hard to minimize into a one message or one statement, bullet point type of what we do, the impact that we do. It's like going back to your movie, right? The scientists know that there's this ginormous meteor, but when you try to describe its complexity, how big, and the technical parts of it, you lose people. So they need to sell it and they need to communicate it to show the value of it. But then it's literally over people's heads, right? Then it's almost so simple that we lose that human understanding of it. Like what? Like that emotional understanding of it. And childcare same is, I have a daughter who's no longer in childcare. And I've reflected back on my own journey and when I was in a working adult with a new mom and the things that I needed, and my perception of what I thought responsibility of a parent is versus responsibility of an industry and a business in serving me. And now that I look back, I have a different perception and a different understanding. And now I think just because of that maturity that we've evolved with, is looking back and challenging ourselves with why did it have to be that way? Why can't it be different, better, improved? And that is what we at Workforce do, is we are constantly challenging that status quo and saying, yes, this is the system, these are the structures, but can they be better? Can there be more than one structure, more than one way? And when it comes to childcare, that is, for me, the first industry. I think before we can talk about healthcare, manufacturing, any other industry that people work in, or that industries are brought into the community to start businesses, we all want that. But before that happens, childcare is just as critical as paved roads. It is that basic and that necessary for us to build from. And we just haven't seen it that way. We haven't seen it as that important because not everybody uses it. And we kind of have these perceptions of different systems. If we don't use them ourselves, then they're not relevant. If I don't use mass transit, it's not important to me. If I don't have children, childcare doesn't matter to me, or education system isn't important to me, right? But just like grocery stores are important to everybody because we all eat, childcare is that important. And those are things that are just fundamentally necessary before something else can take shape from it. And us at Workforce, I am fortunate that we are in a position to support that industry, not just the businesses and helping them as a business and as an early education system, but then also the support to the families and the people that need them. So we're, as difficult as it is and as large as a meteor it is, I'm fortunate that we are in the position to actually, be the ones to respond and provide those services to them.
Yeah, when you say meteor, beyond just the industry, I think our budget for childcare is meteoric. It's, if we tell people, I think listeners now would probably, their jaws would drop if they knew the amount that we invested. Where are we at? Like 55 million a year that we're
It's
putting
close to
into
55
childcare?
million a year now, and that's the cost of care, but then it's also the services that we provide to the providers, to the parents. There's residual things that go to that. It is expensive. Childcare is expensive, and it should be, right? These are our children. We want a quality care environment for them. So it's relevant, and it's important for all of us. So that's one of those. Why it's under Workforce is because it is a workforce component.
Yeah, and when you say services that we provide to the businesses, what are some of those services that we're doing now, aside from just the care for families? And I like that you said businesses and not providers, because although they are providers of childcare,
there's several services that we provide to them. One, we see them as two things. We see them as a small business. Is they have employees, they have an accounting and payroll necessities, they have tax systems, they have maintenance, facilities, and capital assets. So we see them from that lens: is how healthy are you as a business in maintaining your capital assets, your human assets, all of those things. How efficiently are you running your business? We provide those resources to them, and access to business coaching, and in funding now from the state, that those funds can now be used for some of those business necessities. But then what the service that they provide, they care for children. How quality is that care? Are those workers trained and professionally developed to interact and to teach children and to care for children? Do they know CPR? Do they have licensing and registering, all of those basics? But then also, as a learning environment, access to curriculum and nutrition information. So these are things that make them good service providers, is that quality care, because we're sending our children there. We want our children to be in healthy, safe, and learning environments, and also for the business to run efficiently, so that they aren't just, that they're not just stable, but that they continually can grow and expand and maybe take take on more children year over year, and if they need to expand and add and move from a home-based environment to a commercial-based environment. So those are the two types of different sides of resources that we provide.
I think expansion is big, especially when we consider just our businesses are the primary customer for WSB, and definitely trying to make that clear to listeners. Although we do serve more job seekers because there's a higher volume, businesses are the number one priority, because without them, we don't have the job opportunities, right? But also enhancing, expanding, and bringing in that digital literacy aspect, I think, was really big. And just to remind listeners, one of our more popular projects was the Microsoft digital solutions that we did during COVID, when we really did recognize, because of the pandemic, just how behind our businesses were when it came to technology. So in this past year, we've expanded our digital solutions into childcare and helping these businesses, because let's kind of be truthful. It's kind of eye-opening to see that the profit margin for childcare is almost not worthwhile, right, at this point. And it's in the 8% area, I want to say. And when you think about that, the people that are running these childcare centers, these childcare providers, are truly doing it. Not obviously they're doing it for the business, but there's clearly a dedication to the craft, right? They care about these kids, and it is an educational aspect. The same way teachers, who many say are underpaid, they're there because they recognize their duty to be teachers. But when you start to implement these digital solutions, though, we're not only supporting the business in this expansion in providing more capacity for the necessity of childcare, because there is a capacity issue at times, we're also increasing that profit margin for them with the efficiency, and hopefully bringing it to something that's more lucrative. But when you talk 55 million plus the extra funding that we brought in, not just for the digital solutions, but when the state helped us out with the CCRF, which is Child Care Relief Funding, gosh, there were, I don't know how many more millions implemented into businesses, where childcare centers would get up to $125,000 per childcare. Like, I think that was the max that they could get for a year of just how can you improve your spot? And that's free money. And so there's a lot going on. But I Googled while you were talking, I Googled the Department of Education budget just to kind of get an idea. And it's 68 billion. And that's where childcare needs to be, or maybe not to that extent, because you have more kids in school, but for childcare, we need to be in the area of billions. So, I mean, it's a start. We're scratching the surface, but childcare is number one, and definitely one of the biggest priorities of WSB. But since we're talking about literacy, let's move into a little bit about what we were able to do for businesses. We talked a lot about, well, I just kind of touched a bit on the digital solutions, but can you tell us a little about what we've been providing to businesses in terms of digital solutions in this past year?
So, we started the digital solutions program during COVID, and it's still relevant. It's something that we have to continue to provide long-term for businesses, because there's just so many businesses, and digital, technology, it evolves. So you can't just, learn how to use your VCR and think that you're techie. You need to evolve with the technology as it changes, and it changes so fast. So that's part of our responsibility as well. It's a skill that needs to be learned and constantly learned, refreshed, updated. And so what we are doing is taking resources, people that are very gifted and skilled with digital acumen and skills and technology skills, and having them consult businesses. These individuals also have a knack for relationship building. It's not just a quick sell. We understand our community here, and that the majority of our businesses here are small micro businesses. And we don't want to just sell them on something or be a fly-by-night resource and say, just plug in this or download that and you're good. No, it's a relationship. We want to indicate to businesses and business owners and business leaders this is part of, an evolution for you. You need to learn some of these skills. You need to recognize the skills that maybe some of your employees have and how to maximize that. And so this digital solutions program or digital transformation consultants are going door to door with businesses, having those conversations, understanding what those business models are, and then saying, have you considered this? What kind of system do you use for that? Could you benefit from something like this? And then helping that business owner walk through that actual implementation. If it's something like a social media page, let's start there and let's see what that does for your business, and then move you in the next one. It's like baby steps in technology, right? Let's get you comfortable with this. Let's show you what it can do, and then we'll move you to the next and move you to the next. And walking a business through some of that transformation it has been transformative for so many of our small businesses that maybe had an understanding or a perception that this was good enough. I'm able to generate some business, so I'm good. That's fine. But if you did a little bit more, you could generate a little bit more business. And that's part of that conversation. We don't want to take a small mom and pop and then blow them up online, and then they can't actually support and serve those clients, right? So we also customize those solutions based on their real capacity. So that's part of that digital solutions and that digital transformation is, how do you evolve at a pace that you can be comfortable with and that your business can support, but that actually keeps up with the community. There are, there are few businesses in El Paso or across the state that I can think of where customers are willing to adapt, like go in reverse. In other words, one comes to mind, and I won't use their name, but one comes to mind, and there's we in El Paso, it's an institution. We know so much about this business. We are willing to go to the ATM first, get cash, and then go to this business and consume what they sell because of what they are, because of the institution. That's not often. There are very few places. I'm trying to think of it. If there's another that I know of where the customers are willing to adapt and reverse and say, I know they're not going to meet me where I am, so I'm going to go and do that. I'll tell you, now, especially post-COVID, money, cash is like, ew, I don't want to deal with it, right? I don't want to touch it. So if a business doesn't use cash, I'm out. If I can't find them online, I'm out. If a business is not meeting me where I am, and that's mostly online, I have no idea that they exist, and I'm not really willing to go in reverse. That's what we are trying to do for businesses. Don't force your customers to go in reverse, because unless they really, really love you, they're not going to do it, and you're going to lose them.
I know who you're talking about. And I think that's just an anomaly. I think it's the El Paso Kool-Aid cult.
Right.
We won't say their name.
I did it not for me, but for a guest, a visitor in town that isn't here all the time. I'm not going to do that again today. I'm not going to do that again, maybe the rest of the year, but I'll do it on a special occasion. Not a problem. It's a special occasion, but I'm not going to do that all the time. That's my point.
No, I see what you mean. And although, we really did prioritize the businesses and the childcare industry for businesses this year, bringing in our business consultants. So we're at 300 and counting for this year. I know there were hundreds more the year before. There's still a lot of work to be done, though, because El Paso is at about 15,000 businesses. And not to say that every single one of them is digitally illiterate, but I don't like to use that word. Sorry, illiterate's not a fun word. But there's still a lot of work that we need to do. But in terms of assisting them, there was that conversation, and that narrative just keeps going, is the worker shortage and the issues with not having enough workers. So that's very likely going to change in the coming months. But at least in the past year, this worker shortage, we did also implement technology with the whole addressing of this issue. And job fairs, I mean, we did so much when it came to job fairs, because we were able to remove ourselves from 100% brick and mortar, having people go into these events and walk around and us having to do the labor behind it. But we did a lot of these really cool virtual events. So for us, that totaled in 2022, 53 job fairs. That's insane. I mean, think about there's 360. That's one job fair a week, more than one job fair a week, just one. But yeah, so thanks to really cool platforms, in this case, we use Premiere, but we're able to do some pretty cool stuff. And like you said, Leila, like I'm not going in reverse. I think that's where we're headed. Just in that, let me check my phone, and everything's just so easy to do on your phone. I'm the same way. Like if I can't do something on my phone really quick, maybe at a red light, like you lost my business probably. And man, even better if I can if I can tell Siri or Alexa to do it, like even better, right? Total millennial mom. But we've done a lot in that sense. We've done so much, and I'm really proud of us. And that's in those 53 job fairs and supporting businesses and job seekers. This is where our priority customer service and our secondary customer service, this is where it works, is that we served more than 12,000 customers in terms of job seekers, in bringing them to a job fair and showing them what was available and any other services that we might have done. But that's how many were actually hired who got a job through our services and through the technology that we use. So I'm going to pat ourselves on the back there, Leila. Now, what else?
Yeah, those are 12,000. Those are 12 jobs. When I think about it, those are 12,000. Yes. Right. I mean, that's awesome. Yeah. That's that emotion that is hard to convey in our annual report. And what I hope we can convey in this podcast is that's what we do, is we understand that individuals, every single one of those 12,000 jobs that were filled and placed, those were different people, and they had different pathways and different needs, but they all got to we'd like to hire you on. I mean, there's nothing like that feeling of you're the one, you're it, we're going to bring you on, we're happy to have you, welcome to blah, blah, blah. Yes, that feeling of accomplishment. And, especially in today's world, that's huge. I mean, gosh, us being able to do that, that's just so much fun to have, for us to be that organization.
It's relief, it's trajectory building, it's excitement. There was a video that went viral. I don't know if it was this year or last year, but it did go viral. And I imagine that happened 12,000 times, where this girl got hired, yes, and the outside camera caught her, and she
yeah.
She came out of the building and was walking, I guess, absorbing the fact that she got the job, and she stops and even thought about it for a little bit, right? There was even a pause of what happened in her mind that suddenly sent that energy out, where she just did this little "I got the job" dance. And that's awesome to think that happened more than 12,000 times, thanks to the Hype team, the WSB, the BSU, everyone that's putting in all the work for getting the work done. So that's really cool. I think what's amazing about what we've done, not just with hiring people, not just with improving businesses to be able to hire more people, and the technology and the childcare, is how we've been bringing in the next force to start supporting us, where it's a solution that we're providing to these kids, this youth group. But in reality, I think it's more of a support system for us. It's almost like we're gaining a layer of troops to support our mission at WSB. So, Leila, you wanna tell them how we've come down to the next force, what that means, how this name even came about? Because I think that's our shooting star for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way that you described them as our support system, absolutely. The next generation always takes care of us. So, I reflect also a lot about, myself and how I was perceived when I was younger, the things that grown-ups would say to me, the things that my elders, family, workers, bosses would say to me when I was a kid, and how they patted me on the head. And, oh, that's cute. And, oh yeah, well, you don't know. Or, oh yeah, well, it's your generation. Right. And there was this sense of I'm not worthy. I'm too young. I'm not worthy. I'm not there yet. I don't belong yet, et cetera, et cetera. And then we came to this point several years ago, maybe right before COVID, that almost everywhere I hear about the millennials and they don't want to get off their phone. All they want to do is game, and all they want to do is be on their phones, and they don't look up. And this constant complaint about the millennials and the generation Y, and they don't interact and all of these things, right? And I'm thinking, this is my kid, and this is who she is. I'm contributing to that, right? I'm contributing to, me and my cousin, we had Nintendo and we would always play, and they would tell us, quit playing so much. And as we grew up, we turned around and did the exact same thing. We bought our kids, game consoles and Wii's and, all of these things, iPads. So we've contributed to that. And then we complained that they are actually good at it. So I was listening, and then I just got to a point where I'm like, look, this is the next generation. My daughter's going to have to take care of me. She's going to have to take care of us. Our kids that we're complaining about, they're going to need to take care of us. So we better learn to figure out what is the good part of them. We can't just come to these conferences, come to these meetings and just complain and eye roll and say that only we know better. We just can't do that. And us as an organization, that's not who I wanted us to be. So we have to force ourselves to be open-minded, and then look at them from what good do they have? And they have a lot of good. They've got a lot of good. The next generations behind us, they have a lot of good. They are worthy. They have talent. They have assets. They are a great contribution to society. What are those things, and how can we elevate them? How can we better prepare them to take care of the future? And so first, the word next. Who's next? Who's behind us? Who's going to take this job next? Who's going to run this organization next? Who's going to run this city next? That is our youth. So that's where that word came from, next. And then our name happens to be workforce. And it's a very powerful word. When you break it down like that, force, it's actually got power. I mean, it actually describes power. So the power of our next generation, it just was like, this makes sense. The next generation has force to lead and to move forward and to propel us forward. Boom, let's take it and let's give it to them and let them run with it. Letting them run with it is that courage that it's going to take in us to let them run with it and do with it what they determine, what they can make with it. So we're trying to harness this power of the next generation and let them utilize the skills that they have, not the skills that I have or that I think are most valuable, but letting them use the skills that they have naturally been given and dealt with, which is the technology and that instinct, and let them utilize it. So let's put them to good use. Again, this next generation, they want something else. They want purpose. They want to fit. They want to show their value as people and as individuals. They want organizations that match the things that match their values. Environmentalism, social and civic issues. It's not just economic growth, but it's spiritual and social and cultural growth as well. So we are trying to understand all of those desires and values of the next generations and matching them with their talents, and then matching them with the purpose of those organizations, and then letting them use them. So the first thing that we've done. On the other hand, we're also hearing a lot of our youth, because of COVID, they're struggling. So they have this desire, they have these values, they have this skill, but then they've struggled because they've also faced things that I never dealt with. I never had to face some of the major things that they've had to face. I didn't face 9/11. I didn't face COVID. I didn't face school shootings. I didn't face all of these things that they're having to deal with. Our problems was like fashion, fashion and MTV. They weren't these major social issues. They're dealing
So
with
true.
these things, and so they're struggling. So how do we,
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem for us to solve. That's definitely something of a responsibility that organization has. How do we help solve this problem? Well, let's solve the problem by leaning into that purpose and leaning into that value and giving them a platform that we can solve it together. So we know we have meteors and problems with our childcare industry. We want to teach our youth the importance of early education and education in general, and why it's important to have our babies be kindergarten ready so that they can advance and propel through their education system. So we want our next generation to see the value of education like we do, right? What better way than to help them see the childcare industry from the inside, and how, I don't know that neglected is the right word, but it could be, how left behind we have let them be because they've been in this corner. And then let's use the youth with their technology talents to help those businesses improve. So some of the Next Force digital consultants, yes, they're going into that business and they're talking to them about using iPads and accounting software and payroll software and things like this. But then they are also seeing that this childcare provider and this childcare owner is having to take care of these children, and that they are reading books to them, and these kids are eating well, and this is a really great environment for these children to be in. So they're seeing, like, these are kids, right? These could be my baby brothers and baby sisters, or even my own kids. I want them to be in a good, healthy environment. So they're seeing our Next Force are learning also about this industry and about education, the education system. So while we are using their talents, we are also teaching them a purpose and a value. And they're coming out and saying, wow, not only did I help them with this software and with this equipment, I didn't realize that childcare was so important. Now now they are sharing those things with the people that they know. And that's what I'm hoping is very organically, that's where change happens, is now there's an awareness, an understanding, there's a different approach. And so maybe now in the long term, maybe now they consider, how do we better support the early education and the education system, and how do we change policy, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot that's going to come behind it. Who knows what they're going to make of it, but that is theirs to make with.
It's like both ends of the spectrum in terms of the sharpening of their technical hard skills, which are the technology. And man, as a 4-year-old daughter, my daughter teaches my mom was teaching her how to use Pinterest yesterday. And it's like, wow, she's like, Grandma, which one do you want? You want Pinterest? Okay. And so you're teaching and sharpening these really hard skills, but at the same time, with the Next Force childcare digital consultants, we're in accidentally almost instilling almost like a maternal paternal development early on, that it's almost like a parenting home ec situation where, like, they're seeing these important values, they're seeing what they want for their own future, and it's like the weirdest way of combining all these things together. Obviously that wasn't intentional, but seeing that, I think that's what we need from the root. We need this, like, this valuing of education, quality education, even parenting, moving into this generation, and putting that forward so that we do have those educational outputs that we need. That 68 billion can be 120 billion by the time they're in leadership or whatever they end up doing. But that I think is a tremendous combination of just beauty and growth and development, and what it is that we do, right? And when you say, like, I'm glad you pointed out just what they're going through, what's different for them outside of this complaint that they're on their screens too much. Like, let them be on their screens, because that's essentially where we're headed. Just
Mhm.
like we weren't allowed to watch TV because it was going to mess up our eyes. Well, we needed that TV so that we could figure out technology down the road, right? But thinking about like giving them the platform and letting them tell us what they need. I've never, I mean, I did learn with instruction coming from the top and trickling down. I did learn from that because that was more structural, that was discipline. But I'll tell you, the most that I've ever learned were things that I had to learn by myself, where you had to exercise that muscle of problem solving, critical thinking, and not being told what to do. And we've got too much of telling them what to do, especially now, and especially with things that we have no experience in telling them how to do. Aside from just technology, the things that you mentioned with the crises and tragedies that they have to go through, the alert, the survival mode that they need to know how to be in if somebody does come in and start, like, ridiculous things that they have to deal with, right? So throw them a bone, let them figure things out, give them that platform, give them the autonomy right now, because there's a saturation of the finger, constant. And that's, I learned from it, but I learned more on my own and solving my problems. And granted, that meant I fell on my
And
face
that's what
quite
we
a few
want. We
times.
want them to be resilient to solve their own problems. We've been helicoptering them, and then we're mad at them for not knowing what to do on their own, right? So yeah, we've got to also we have to also own our own accountability on what we've done and what we haven't done as adults and as parents, right? So yeah, and that doesn't mean like let them do whatever they want and have them all the free. No,
Right.
we have to have we really do need to just understand that it's not like it's not always like it was. We don't have our generation, my generation, your generation. That's why they call them generations, because the our worlds are different, and our perceptions are different, and our experiences are different, and that is all part of what's not in our annual report but is to come, is part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion plan, because that's the whole point. It's not the Leila show, it's not the Bianca show, it's who we are as an organization is to be reflective and responsive to everyone.
Yeah, less of the do it this way, and still being there for them on a support system as they've become our support system with workforce development. Solve their own problems, but always be there for them to guide it, right? To guide if they need the assistance or the support or the encouragement, motivation. But um, definitely just, and then plus with this technology and the access of things, like I used to have to run to a bookshelf and pull out an encyclopedia at my grandma's house on Sundays if I had a question about something, to learn about a very specific subject. You probably had to go to a library, or I mean, not that you're that much older than me, but I'm saying, like, or even go through a card catalog in the
Yeah,
library
the
and that
Dewey
stuff to
Decimal
learn.
System. I had to take a whole class on the Dewey Decimal System and look up books on cards. And when I tell people, my daughter that, she's like, "What?" Right? So yeah, those are just different.
It's like, yeah, they have so much more capacity now to solve their own problems and make use of it, make use of the access to technology. But I think our role, and we do it so well with what we do at Workforce, and hopefully, more organizations can take the lead with this, is being that support system, kind of that back and forth support for each other versus the rigid structure that we were used to from previous generations. So but I'm loving what we're doing with Next Force. I'm loving what we have planned for the upcoming year. Definitely bringing on more. I'm working with a few myself in my department, so that's been a really cool experience just to see them grow. But it had the COVID situation, the pandemic has revealed to me, not just within my own department, but just with what I'm seeing and some of the other podcasts that we've done with the kids, is just these 2 years. Oof, like it set them back, and we have to make up for that somehow. And I think with the infusion of workforce development with education and what we continue to plan on doing, I think that's going to be a really cool way to keep them afloat and then to thrive even further. But we do have a little more time. We have a few minutes to kind of talk on the other community needs. I don't want to, we can go on about Next Force forever, but one of the biggest issues that we deal with and that we've seen tremendous growth in is how we are tackling that. It's another meteor, the lower wage quartile situation. And just when I say lower wage quartiles, the way we categorize our workforce viewpoint is we like to break it down into four categories of where wages stand. And for us, wages are below how many, what is it, 70% around
It's
there
70.
is under is below living wage.
Yes, we have approximately 300,000 workers in the region, and 70% of those workers earn less than are at the bottom half of wages. So that's where it's not balanced. We have a large percentage of our workforce is even in the lowest, the lowest quarter of job wages. So when you describe those quartiles is just like sorting a list and saying where does everybody fall, and we have a large proportion of our workforce is at the very bottom of the wages. So our urgency as an organization is to uplift and move people up literally up the ladder, and not just in the type in the job progression, but in the wage itself. So there may be technically skilled or technical jobs, but they are still earning very little. And some of this, there's multiple factors and multiple reasons for this, but one of those reasons is also the composition of our business. Like I said, so many of our businesses are small and micro businesses. They can't they're startups, they're very new, and their profit margins are so slim that they cannot afford, their business model cannot afford to pay those higher wages. So there's a lot of things that go along with that, and that's part of the economic development that we do is the composition of our businesses, the types of industries that are in our region. And something that we just looked at, and I'm going to be looking at this year, is the percentage of the types of businesses that we have here, where we have this entrepreneurial spirit and we want to start businesses, and that's a really great instinct to have. It's how do we channel that spirit into creating the type of business that is really needed and can really thrive in this community. When we drive around the community and we see another type of another business coming up that we know there's 5 competitors near one another, what is really going to be the difference that makes one of those succeed over the others, right? We need to look at saturation of a market of all different types of businesses, restaurants, automotive stores, retail stores, the type of restaurant, so all of those things make a difference. Again, the instinct is there to start a business. It's let's create the ecosystem that channels that so that they can create a really great model. That's a bigger challenge. That's not necessarily
And
in just our wheelhouse. It takes literally the village. It's going to take all of our community partners, our business partners, to help and to channel that entrepreneurial spirit in the right direction, because that then answers the question of the types of jobs that are created. And it's not just economic development is not just about creating numbers of jobs. It's the types of jobs. Both of those things have to be on the in the black, right, on the positive side, so that one doesn't weigh down the other. You don't want to create a massive amount of jobs that pay very little, because all you're doing is kind of just oppressing people and keeping people, a large portion of people, under a certain level. And then you also can't just have really high technical jobs, because then your community isn't creating a pipeline and providing quality services that equitably across your community. So it's a constant balance, and it's looking at the data and economic information on a constant basis.
it's like a trickle effect. The more people you maintain in the lower quartiles, the less are obviously getting the higher skills. And then as far as business attraction, then we're not really bringing in the businesses that we want to help develop the rest of it, the quality of life, wanting to be, the conversation of El Paso could be Austin, or El Paso could be Dallas, or this and that. Yeah, we most certainly could. We have all the pieces, we have all the parts, the culture, the beauty, the weather, the potential, and it's just it is going to have to start with what we do in this quartile. Like that's the issue here. I think one of the biggest ones anyway, but
Absolutely.
300,000 people we need to reshuffle, and I'm still learning a lot in this department. It's so interesting to me. I look at it as almost like as a child on a computer game, like how Oregon Trail situation, like how are we going to make sure that we make it across the road? But like that is the strategy that's happening in my brain of like the reshuffling and understanding what needs to go where. So as I learn a lot, this is my biggest goal for next year. Really understanding how to make the right chess moves when it comes to this. Learning how to play chess on an economic development board is really the priority. And what we've been doing and what we've, as a workforce development board, that workforce development is number one in a lot of these economic development conversations across the country. And it's making headway, and people are understanding just how important it is for that. Essentially, it's the foundation, right? For cities to thrive. If a workforce is thriving, then the city's thriving. And not just workforce, like you said, in the sense of jobs, workforce in the sense of quality, high wage jobs. Yeah, a mix of everything, right? But putting the right people in the right places. But yeah, some of what we do is the skills development, and we hit it from all angles. We're going from business to business, finding out, okay, well, where can we help you? How can we help develop these skills within your existing workers? So we have things like incumbent worker training, and these are some of the awesome services outside of just technology transformation. We pay for training for your workers. We train your workers to become more advanced at what they're doing so that your business, your operation could thrive as well. We support and cover your paychecks for workers if you need the support. If you want to expand as a business but can't afford it, call us. We will invest in you. Consider us almost like angel investors in the sense of a work-based learning program where we'll bring in a group of people to help your business, and we'll cover their paychecks. Like there's so much that we do. And that in itself is upskilling what we call lower quartile, lower skilled workers, and they're learning more with the business operation. So I think what we've done on that end is tremendous in terms of like statistics, or at least what we've done. And the cool thing is we're not just supporting Next Force and the youth and not just everyday workers, not the general public, which we do a lot of that, but we prioritize workers with disabilities. We prioritize veterans. We prioritize women. And so back to that strategic goal of the equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're doing it on all angles. I think we're like an orchestra of like composing some awesome stuff that literally just brings the beauty of what economic and workforce development can bring, and how an entire community can come together to be instruments in creating a masterpiece of what we do. But we supported over 1,000 veterans for the job readiness, and with training, with work experience, with support services. And by that, we're talking gas, we're talking Uber rides, we're talking work clothes, laptops, whatever they needed to ensure that they were able to get this education and upskilling. That's what workforce is there for, and covering the wages of some of them if businesses needed that support. And that's big in a military community, right? We have the second largest base in the country, and a lot of these troops are transitioning and want to go into the civil, into not being soldiers anymore. I don't know why I lost my train of thought with the word, but civil servicemen, right? Is that what you call them? I worked at civilians. But we're helping vets, we're helping transitioning soldiers, Oh, and then I can't forget the reentry situation. And we're not using reentry anymore, Leila. We are starting to call it, because it's no, if I were to have been a former incarcerated person, I wouldn't want to be classified as reentry. Alma and I had this conversation. We said we were going to opportunity talent is the new word. So write down that note,
Oh,
because
I like
it's
it.
it's
Okay.
more it's less judgy, and it just, yeah, they're re-entering the workforce, but they're opportunity talent, and I think that that's just a much better way, if we're going
Yeah.
to be public about, and if they want to be public about how they label themselves. But yeah, we helped 62 regional employers hire individuals with disabilities. So the hireability program that we have, that's the goal of it. We bring in workers that, any disability that allows them to still work. We help support the accommodations for the business. So that's something else that we support with funding. So gosh, we're going to pull this entire report that Karina put together for us. It's called Community Needs and Workforce Solutions, and it's about 4 pages. We could talk here forever about the details of what we do. But we've got all the details that are going to be available in the show notes. And obviously, the annual report that we're putting out is what brought you here. If you clicked on that QR code, or scan that QR code. But is there anything else, Leila, that you want to cover in terms of awesomeness, WSB
No, I think,
awesomeness, or maybe even,
go ahead.
or just like vulnerabilities, maybe things that we should probably work on or do better at this coming year?
Yeah, so just
We're
tying
not
it back
perfect.
to what you started with is our motto is disrupt or be disrupted. We are very proud of the work that we do and the platform that we have, but we check our ego and we know that we can always do better and we are always pushing ourselves. And I'm from the famous song in Hamilton, I'm never satisfied, right? And that takes um, it takes a lot of courage but also patience in pushing ourselves as an organization. Is yes, we do tremendous work and our annual report shows some really great outcomes, but we also know that we want to do better. And so we can show on the data, and what we track is how much better a person has been from where they started with to where they ended with us. And that change, it's incremental change. We know that the services that we provide are not going to change the world overnight. We're not going to fix all of the problems overnight, but we are making progress and we are learning ourselves and evolving ourselves as an organization and constantly doing better. And that's where the biggest source of pride comes from, is that we are able to disrupt ourselves and 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 uh, and hold ourselves to a higher standard all the time, and not just get complacent and comfortable and say, well, this is who we are, this is what we do, and this is the service we provide, and that's it, and never grow. Just because we're over a 20-year-old organization does not make us done. We are constantly evolving. So in the data that we show, yes, we've made tremendous progress. My desire and the desire of our leadership and of our board of directors is to increase it exponentially next year. If we improved somebody's wages 12% this year, let's improve them by 15 to 20% next year, and then push and push. It's constantly honing in on that process and those steps that are allowing us to make progress, to make change. Let's refine those and make those systems better so that we can do it, do more good. So we are holding ourselves to higher standards. There's things that we need to do and push ourselves to get closer to our clients, to further understand the needs of all of our customers. And we are a much larger and much more complex organization that our annual report will give you vision to. But I invite you all to, if there is one particular group that you're interested in, so you say, wow, this is pretty large, but I'm interested in this, or I want to know, can you bring it down and serve me this way? Or somebody that I know has this. Happy to answer that question for you, because we're always going to say yes. We're always going to say yes, we do serve and we can help you with this. It's going to be this pathway. So we are behind the curtain, as Alma would say, we are a very complex network of different pathways within our organization. So we will navigate you to not get lost, don't get overwhelmed. But we are a change agent. We are disrupting poverty. And that is what I'm very proud that this organization is able to do.
Yeah, and you mentioned self-disruption, and I think for business leaders, agency leaders, or anyone in the leadership realm, as far as managing this complex of an organization and personalities and just even different goals, we all have a very common stake in terms of our purpose. We all align on a very, very similar purpose as an organization. And I think one of the best measures of success with us and what you see on our annual report and what you see on our projections and what we want to do for the future is that we thrive on a consistent culture. And that culture, although we are an organization over 20 years old, the emerging culture is young. But it's I think the effects, personally, I think it's the effects of this implemented culture that are showing with the success of the organization. So that correlates. And I think as we disrupt ourselves and we hold ourselves accountable and we align to the values that we've really set forth in the recent years, that's where I see the more aligned we become to these values, it really is just magically results in the outcome and not just outcome in performance measures that TWC sees or that our board of directors sees, but in the joy and the connection and the dedication and the commitment that you see from staff. So I think that an annual report shows the output of our work, but I think we need to also disclose the internal progress that's been happening that I credit you, Leila, and a lot of our lead and all the staff for their commitment, but also just it's a safe place to, granted, we don't, mistakes are made. You can't murder somebody, right? But it's a safe place to, the way we do with Next Force, and we allow people to we allow the Next Force to solve their own problems and have the autonomy and just be able to, okay, I know what I need to do and have that critical thinking space. That has gone such a long way. And it all comes down to prioritizing those values. And I've seen the effects of that, like instant, and I say instant, in these past 3 years of just, wow, look how cool. Like just by doing something as simple as establishing a culture, you can start changing the effects of your organization. So that's been really cool. But all right, so we'll put the rest of this stuff on our show notes and on our website. And yeah, thank you, Leila. This was a great pod.
This was a good session. All right.
We'll see you for the next episodes. We'll talk soon.
We're eager to hear your feedback. Find us on Twitter and LinkedIn and let it out. We don't always have a choice in the situations we face, but you do have a choice in subscribing to solutions. Join the Workforce Situation Room on your favorite podcast platform and hit subscribe, where you'll find a solution to every situation. The best way to serve the community is to get real and understand the pulse of the Borderplex. Till next month.